Hey, vets and families, welcome to the most comprehensive guide on navigating your VA disability claim for mental health conditions. I'm releasing a new series entitled Therapist Explains VA Mental Health Disability Ratings, how the VA decides claims for PTSD, anxiety, and depression, and more. If you're a veteran battling PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, or major depressive disorder, you already know that the fight doesn't end when you take off your uniform. Securing the benefits you deserve can be a battle all its own. So I'm approaching this series not only as a veteran who has lived these realities, but also as a trauma-focused therapist, and a trauma-informed therapist. That means I'll combine perspective of experience with the latest research and clinical standards, so you walk away with both practical and professional insight. Now, I know the VA process sometimes can feel like a maze, especially for mental health conditions. You need to know how the VA connects your service to your symptoms, and how these symptoms translate into a disability percentage. That's why this series exists. Each episode is designed to give you clarity with a consistent, research backed, and evidence backed format that will help you align your evidence with what the VA are really looking for. Now, while diagnostic categories evolve, VA disability ratings are still anchored in 38 CFR 4.130. This is the general rating formula for mental disorders. This regulation determines how your symptoms translate into percentages like 10%, 30%, 50%, 70%, or 100%. We'll walk you through where your evidence should map directly to these rating levels so that you can clearly see where your claim might fall and that you're not confused about your VA disability ratings for mental health. So here's how I'll break it down in each video. I'll start with a DSM-TR overview of the specific condition. After that, I'll do a peer-reviewed study highlighting that condition's impact on veterans. After that, I'll do an effective VA claim strategy that's specifically tailored for that diagnosis. And then I'll offer some final thoughts and actionable steps so that you can win your claim and maximize your VA benefits. We will use the DSM-5TR, and I've actually got a DSM-5TR right here. I keep a copy of this because this is the Bible that we use as therapists whenever we're diagnosing any kind of conditions. It's called the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and the latest version was published in 2022. It's the same thing that the VA uses. If you'll see there in 38 CFR for mental health conditions, the VA uses the DSM-5 and the latest edition, the DSM-5TR, in order to evaluate mental health conditions. I want to make sure that you understand exactly how your symptoms meet diagnostic criteria. Listen, I understand the gravity of these concerns because I've lived them and I've counseled others through them. So these videos will carry the seriousness, gravity, and respect that every veteran mental health issue demands. We're actually talking about your life. We're talking about your well-being. We're talking about your family, and we're talking about your future. So that deserves a level of care and respect that I intend to give in this series. In every episode of this series, I'll also provide you with a free practical tool titled VA Mental Health Claim Self-Assessment and Decision Tree, helping veterans translate symptoms into strong claims. It's just a tool that you can download as a PDF directly from the video description, or you can grab it in the pinned comment section. This guide will help you organize your symptoms, understand where they fit on the VA rating scale, because sometimes that's very hard to do, and it'll prepare you for your CMP exam with confidence. If you or another veteran needs immediate help, please know that the Veteran Crisis Line is available 24/7. Just dial 988 and press 1. And if you want to stay equipped with the best information, subscribe now and hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss an episode. It really is time to get informed and get the rating that you deserve. And finally, I want to give a very important disclaimer. This content is for educational purposes only and not intended as legal, clinical, or medical advice. No therapist or client relationship is established. Royal Rock Counseling and Consulting LLC is not a VA accredited agent, attorney, or VSO, and is not affiliated with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We do not prepare, present, or prosecute VA claims, but we may offer administrative guidance and referrals to qualified professionals. Thank you for your service. and let's begin your journey to a fully developed VA claim. I'll see you in the series.
Okay, vets and families, this is VA disability ratings for schizoaffective disorder. And this is, again, it's from 38 CFR 4.130. That diagnostic code, for those of you submitting your ratings, is 9211 for schizoaffective disorder. The evaluation criteria is rated under the general rating formula for mental disorders. And again, it's 0 to 100% scale based on occupational and social impairment. Here are some of the core functional impacts for veterans who suffer from schizoaffective disorder: delusions, hallucinations, and disorganized thinking, impaired judgment, mood instability, and isolation, and then reduced reliability and productivity in daily functioning. You'll see some of the same items in schizoaffective disorder as we saw in the last one, because all of these things are in the schizophrenia spectrum. So you'll see some of the same symptoms, but it's important to understand that these symptoms are still distinguished depending on how they show up according to the DSM-5 criteria. Okay. And speaking of the DSM-5 criteria, the DSM-5 TR code is 295.70. Let me show you something here. So this DSM-5 code here that I'm showing, TR code 295.70. Remember, this is what the clinician is using. Okay. What you have to remind them of is the actual schizoaffective disorder code under 38 CFR, which we showed you in the previous slide. But these TR codes that'll show up on my slide are directly from the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual 5 and the latest version PR. So that's what that's for. Core diagnostic features of schizoaffective disorder are uninterrupted period of illness with a major mood episode, depressive or manic, and symptoms meeting criterion A for schizophrenia. And again, criterion A in schizophrenia for schizophrenia is in the DSM-5 TR. Delusions or hallucinations for 2+ weeks in the absence of major mood episode. Mood symptoms are present for most of the total duration of the illness. The disturbance is not attributable to substances or another medical condition. When you go to the DSM-5, it'll have criterion A, B, C, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta for you military heads, Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, Echo, as many as needed to establish criterion. That's important because a lot of veterans will say, well, I experience these symptoms, but there's a time sensitivity and there's duration and frequency and severity for these symptoms that you have to be aware of, right? And if you don't meet that DSM-5 criteria, then it'll be difficult to get a diagnosis for that particular illness. Common clinical manifestations are disorganized speech or behavior, paranoia, mood liability, and flattened effect. Flattened effect means everything you do is just flat. You have no upwards or downwards emotion, cognitive impairment, and poor insight, particularly if you're not the type of person who always has cognitive impairment. That could be an issue, and that could be a clinical manifestation for schizoaffective disorder. Impaired occupational and interpersonal functioning. Here's some research and claim challenges for veterans, and I have this research from Malaspina in 2013. That finding was that exposure to trauma and chronic stress in service environments, this is military service environments, can exacerbate psychotic and mood symptoms, complicating diagnosis and treatment continuity. Now, this is from a care perspective, but also we're going to look and see how it can also affect being able to establish evidence from a VA claim perspective. Right, so here's some claim evidence challenges. Diagnostic ambiguity is often misclassified as PSD, bipolar, or schizophrenia, meaning there's a misdiagnosis there. Okay, and people may think that because you're exhibiting some of the same diagnostic criteria as some of these other ones, a trained or skilled diagnostician might miss the fact that, hey, this is not PTSD. This is not one of the other trauma stress-related disorders. This is actually schizoaffective disorder. So it's really, really important to get someone who knows what they're doing when they're diagnosing you. Fluctuating symptom Force makes documentation inconsistent across service and post-service records. That's even when you go to the VA or private medical after you get out. There's a stigma and underreporting of psychotic symptoms during service. That's with all of these, including PTSD and some of the other traumas. That's with all of the mental health disorders, and difficulty establishing nexus due to the long latency between service exposure and clinical manifestation. So that means you could have gotten it in the service, and there's just a latency period, a holding period where it's just in your system, and it doesn't manifest itself until something else happens, and that could be post service. So it's really important that if anything happens, whether you're in the military or particularly when you're after the military, going to be so much easier to establish that nexus. Okay. Harder when you wait for longer periods of time, or if it manifests itself after periods of time. But if it does do that after 3, 4, 5 years, use this evidence, use this research in this peer-reviewed article to as evidence or as a description. If you have to go to a higher level review or Board of Veterans Appeals to say, hey, listen, sometimes this takes a long time to manifest itself, and this is what it was in my case. Here's a study to prove it. Here's a VA claim strategy for a favorable decision. You want to obtain comprehensive psychiatric evaluation, identifying schizoaffective disorder as primary or secondary to service-related trauma. Let me say something about psychiatric evaluations. Let's establish the difference between seeing a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and a therapist. No therapist necessarily can write you diagnoses for these psychotic disorders. They're not going to be able to necessarily write you a letter for that because a lot of these psychotic disorders you have to take medicine for, and therapists can't prescribe medicine. We can definitely do a clinical diagnosis of that, but final diagnosis is going to have to be from a psychologist. Some psychologists can prescribe medicine, some can't, depending on your area of study of psychology. All psychiatrists can give medicine. So if it's one of these disorders, it's like that you want a psychiatrist or you want a psychologist giving you an opinion. Reference service treatment records or early behavior indicators. For example, if you had disciplinary issues, isolation, or hospitalization. A quick word about disciplinary issues, which we'll repeat in this series as well. Sometimes in the military, you may have gone to NJP, Captain's Mess in the Navy, Article 15 in the Air Force. People call it different things. And you may have gone and had disciplinary issues and been given non-judicial punishment, but it could very well have been that you had one of these disorders and you were exhibiting those symptoms. Go back and look at the NJP that you received. Go back and look at the narrative on your page 12. That's what it would be, your page 12 in your service record. Look at what they gave you. Look at your type of discharge, okay? And start putting this narrative together, particularly if you have a diagnosis and you have seen symptomology post-military. Start putting those things together. Go see a doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, or a therapist and see if they can piece together the history of what may have been one of these disorders, particularly schizoaffective disorder. Submit a DBQ, and we've done a video on DBQs, very comprehensive deep dive addressing psychosis, mood instability, and occupational impairment. Support Nexus letter with psychiatrist statement linking the disorder onset to service stressors or perhaps a TBI. And you want to highlight chronicity and recurrence of psychotic and mood episodes. Continuing, you want to get lay statements, and we've talked about this from family, spouse, or fellow service members describing early changes in thinking, mood, or paranoia. What they're going to do is they're going to establish that, hey, listen, he or she had these symptoms early on, and they just progressed after he got out of the military. Full service treatment evidence, document consistent psychiatric care, medication use or hospitalizations, vocational social impact. You want to provide work history showing your job loss, isolation, or inability to maintain relationships. It's very important that you note your activities of daily living impact. Okay, and then clinical corroboration, any neuropsychological and psychiatric testing confirming impaired functioning. The goal here is to demonstrate that functional impairment aligns with VA's rating formula for mental disorders, supporting a 70% to 100% rating when appropriate. Here's some final thoughts on maximizing your ratings and some support resources. Listen, vets and families, if you or anybody you know is battling symptoms of schizoaffective disorder, maybe you've seen it happening with someone, or you see a veteran who's struggling with it, please know that help is available. Get evaluated by a qualified VA or community psychiatrist. Work with a VA accredited representative to develop your claim evidence. And make sure you subscribe to this channel for more in-depth videos on VA mental health ratings, claim strategies, and evidence development. We're here to help, and I hope you'll tune in because we got a lot more that we're going to talk about with regard to mental health claims.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. If you want any more information about the subject of this series, be sure to check out the playlist right here. And remember, live royally and live well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.